Hello and welcome to Season 4, Episode 14 of the Sajin Photography Podcast. My name is Jason Teal, and we've got a whopper of an episode today. I originally was going to talk about the rising costs of film photography in Korea because that has been something that really put a wrench in the gears for my Analog Visions Instagram account and a lot of just the simple enjoyment that I was having over the last couple of years shooting analog photos and with the old cameras and discovering new types of film. But when you are paying upwards of $20 to $30 to even $40 a roll, plus the development and scanning, it just wasn't really that great. So I was going to talk about that, but something happened. And that something was a post that popped up in the Busan Lightstalkers group asking essentially for a free handout. And you can go and read it yourself. It's a quite popular post in the group right now. But what I wanted to talk about is I wanted to come across in a helpful manner, because if you remember back when I first started this podcast, the very first episode, I talked about receiving criticism, and I referenced my interactions of sorts with none other than Chase Jarvis. And I had mentioned kind of how that left a bitter taste in my mouth because I felt that him and a lot of the other guys that chimed in, the DIY photography group, and then what was the other one? SLR Lounge. They sort of took their pot shots at what I was trying to accomplish. And I think it sort of mirrors what this guy was trying to do with his post. And I'm not going to say his name in this podcast. I don't want to be liable for any sort of insults. But before I get too far in, I do want to stress the fact that I'm not here to put this guy down. I'm not here to say, hey, don't be like this guy. Be like me. I'm not trying to do any of that because I think there's too much of that. And if there's one thing that I can fault a lot of the photography gurus and a lot of the YouTube channels out there that are quote unquote trying to help the average photographer, they're not. What they're trying to do is make clickbaity podcasts, maybe this one is, or YouTube videos or something to make an example out of these guys saying like, how dare you try and be better than me? This is wrong. And I'm going to show you exactly how to do it, but I'm not actually going to show you anything. And that's the key point. I don't want to throw shade at Chase Jarvis. I know that he's got a good multi-million-dollar company and millions of dollars worth of endorsements, and the fucker looks like Bradley Cooper. He's got it made. But I do want to say that when you're trying to help people, you should come across as a teacher, not a douchebag. And we're all teachers here primarily, for the most part. And that's the kind of the thing that I really want to touch on in this, is that when people come to you for help, and, you know, myself, I've spent 20 years being a teacher. Imagine this in the classroom. A kid comes up and says, teacher, I want to study, but I don't have any books and pencils and stuff. And I just turn to him and say, like, look at this guy here. Everybody in the classroom, look at this guy. Well, if you want to become a famous person and you don't even have a pencil, that's not how you go and do it, blah, blah, blah. I'm not going to be that much of an asshole, because I essentially that's what I think Chase and all his lackeys did, was essentially make an example and say, like, don't be like this guy, and follow my videos about morning routines and interviewing Brene Brown or something. That's what's going to make you a better photographer or something. You get the point. They're not coming off as genuine. They're not actually like looking at the situation and trying to find a particular situation that will actually help you. That's not their business plan. Their business plan is half-truths and showmanship to get people to follow them. But if you start peeling back the layers, they're really not helpful. Like if you listen to all of the Chase Jarvis live stuff and you peeled back the layers, it's not going to make you the next Chase Jarvis. You're just going to have a lot of sound bites and quotes, and that's about it. And to be honest, when I say this, that's me, okay? I have followed all of these guys for many, many years. And I'll say it right now. I am not a famous photographer. I have not had jobs in the last couple of years. I'm not a Roy Cruz or a Dylan Goldby. I am just a guy who talks into the microphone because his Hagwon job, where he teaches the ABCs to little kids twice a week, doesn't start until 2 p.m. So, you know, that's the reality. But that's what we're going to get into today, is sort of helping this person understand and reorient himself so that he can be successful. Because I think that's, as a community, what we should do. You know, we can step back and say, like, oh my God, how the fuck could you ask something like that? But on the other hand, we're all mature 40-something-year-old photographers, or at least I am anyway. We could lend a helping hand, not by giving him a Canon, EOS R5 brand new camera kit. No, but by giving him the information that he can help better himself and get along further in his career. Now, I bet you're all wondering what exactly this particular person asked in the group to warrant such a response from the illustrious Sajin Photography podcast. I'm going to beg you to go over there and read the question and responses yourself, but I'll give you the short and sweet version. Now, this particular person has had a odd history within the group for basically just trying to use it as a social meetup or hookup group. And again, I'm going to tell you that this is a photography group for expats and Koreans alike. So it's not really a place where, like you go and ask to meet up to go to a nightclub or something. It's a place where you ask where you can find a place to fix your camera, or we post photo walks, things like that. Not really a social club atmosphere, but again, learning. So he asked a really odd question. He was looking for a patron who can donate and support small equipment for his newly upcoming projects on YouTube, Facebook, and a blog, and fine printing, i.e. books, such as, now this is where people I think took a little bit of issue, DSLR cameras, in plural, drones, plural, Apple laptops and phones, etc., to better efficiently capture different views of Korea and neighboring parts of the world, either Japan, China, Hong Kong, Taiwan, etc., as a native. I'm not sure what he means by as a native, because I think maybe he's Korean American, but we'll see. Now, to compare opinions with Westerners through creative works, please help me get a little funded for a quick process. Now, that is a tall order. That is a tall order for someone who, up until this moment in time, I don't think I've ever seen any of his images, okay? That is a tall order for someone even like myself, who has been in the photo community here in Korea close to 20 years. So what can we take away from this? Well, this is the meat of this podcast, is how can we explain and how can we improve and give a better response to this person without just pointing and laughing? Because I think that's sort of the childhood schoolyard thing where people roll their eyes and, oh my God, I can't believe you could ask that. No fault for asking. Okay, if I could get away with it, if I could ask somebody for an assignment or a better paying job or a car, fuck, I would. Like, I mean, it's a tall order, but you have to understand also too that this is a generation. Like, my generation was all about the school of hard knocks. My father's generation was even more so. And we're now facing generations that when times get tough, they go to the internet, they go to GoFundMe, they look for someone to give them the answer rather than hammering it out themselves. And I think that's sort of the key point here. Now, I do have to fully commend the group for actually being mature about this, because when we first saw it, even myself included, I laughed my ass off, like, what is going on with this request? But I think the best comment, and something that I am going to echo in this podcast, has to come from Ben Weller. Now, if you don't know who Ben Weller is, he is one of the original admins. He's one of the two people, I think, that started Busan Lightstalkers. And he's a working professional photographer, one of the best in Asia, not just Korea, in fucking Asia. And he's worked on a lot of major projects. Most notably, he's done a lot of work with National Geographic. So he's coming to this as a full-on photographer, someone who's not just, fucking around with their camera like I am. He is the shit. So he said this. He goes, the approach is not going to work, i.e. asking for hands out. Here's some advice. Work hard, save your money. When you have enough to buy a new camera, don't. Take a trip instead or a class. Work on improving your skills in subjects, selection, composition, lighting, visual storytelling, and writing. Learn about color theory. Start putting together a portfolio that you can show to potential clients, and then work hard to get it in front of those people. If and when you do start getting paid work, then it might be time to start investing in better equipment. No one is going to give it to you. Yes, yes, yes. Ben, I'm going to try and get him on the show later on, but basically he nailed this one because he's coming from a person who has had to do this. He's had to grind out his career and get those photos in front of people. Now, if you've heard me bitching and moaning years and years on this podcast about why I'm not getting any work, it's because I will fully state this. My work is not good enough to get any notice from people in that area. That's it. Done deal. If I were like Noé Alonso or other people where my work just screams creativity, yeah, I'm going to get out a ton of projects, but mine doesn't. So this is the key point. I want to backtrack and sort of piggyback off of Ben's idea and his post and his comment there. So point first is that a lot of people think that getting new equipment is going to make the whole difference. Problem is, I've met a ton of mediocre photographers, myself included, who have good gear, who have the gajillion megapixel cameras and L series or RS glass and thousands of dollars worth of equipment. They still take shitty photos. Okay, so what Ben is saying is that if you go back and if you study how to tell a story with your photos, do color theory, how to get those tones that when you look at an image complement the subject as well, complementary colors, blues and yellows and oranges, things like that. Not just, well, here's what I see, clickety-clickly. No, this is what we must learn. So my advice to this particular individual is to, again, reread what Ben said, but also take a step back from focusing on the gear first. Focus on the craft. Focus on your storytelling, because he mentioned that he wants to show this perspective of a native person as opposed to differing opinions with Westerners or something like that. So that's his concept. Great. How do you express that? Okay, because what I'm sort of sniffing out here is I have a feeling that he's looking to sort of get that big show, like with the drones, walking through, say, the farm fields of Vietnam and stuff like that, and sort of getting this epic cinematographic footage. You can do that without having to invest in a drone, because I'll also add in, once you get into drones and all of that, it's a whole different kettle of fish. You can get this stuff done simply with a GoPro. And this is what I'm sort of telling people to look at, myself included. I am trying to shift into getting more and more into, say, product photography and stuff for my Olsen Online account. I can't afford to purchase a lot of new equipment. I have to make do with what I've got. Now, I've been fortunate enough over the years to have accumulated cameras and drones and whatnot, but that came about through getting jobs. Okay, so for example, I had purchased my drone because I had worked for the Visa company and the Olympics, and I had worked basically nonstop from, I would say, November until after February, just planning everything and getting everything done for the time of the Olympics. Now, that afforded me a little bit of money extra to put towards something that I was keen to add to my arsenal of equipment. Point being is that if you're going to purchase all this equipment, you're going to waste a lot of money where, as Ben said, you can take a trip or you can invest in yourself by studying. And I think that is the key. We want the instant gratification of popping open boxes. That's why there are so many unboxing videos. People love that stuff. But it's not going to get eyes on your photos. And then going back to this particular gentleman, I've looked at his Instagram account and it's okay. And this is echoing basically what Chase said to me years ago when he looked at my portfolio, but he gave like a very brief, skim of it. With this particular guy here in Korea, I can see what he's doing, and I think the best way to go about doing this is to take a step back and make a proof of concept, really hammer out the idea, make a plan, make a spreadsheet, choose about 20 places that you want to go in Korea or Japan, and find a way to make them happen. But really, for those first 5 spots, really make them sing. Really just go balls to the walls on this. And what you can do, you don't need a DSLR camera. You need your iPhone. Maybe you need a selfie stick or a gimbal, something like that. You can rent these and then go out and put together a massive amount of media and things like that. Do reels, do behind the scenes stuff. Really work on that, because where it's going to get eyes on your stuff is not, they're not going to be like, damn, that guy's got a nice camera. Let's hire him. No, where it's going to matter is when you start taking shots that get people talking, when you start making content that really people are like, damn, like I want to go there, or this is great. And trust me when I say this is possible to do on your phone. You can edit, you can do everything from your phone. And in this same conversation, Lee MacArthur, who I'm going to have on the show quite soon, brought up a discussion that he and I were at with the legendary National Geographic photographer, David Gutenfelder. And one of his moments, where we all were like, damn, someone asked him the obvious question, what is his favorite camera? And he said, you know what? I primarily shoot with my iPhone. And everyone just gasped. They were thinking he was going to say well, I've got this, beaten up Leica camera that I've used since World War II or something like that. No. And he explained the situation where if he's shooting film, and he's done it where they're on a tight deadline, he's drawing the film roll out the window of the car in Kenya or somewhere, Rwanda, he doesn't have to deal with that. He just takes shots with his phone. He's focusing on, again, what Ben said, because Ben's also a National Geographic photographer. He's focusing on the story, composition, angles, lighting, things like that, all of which you can do with your phone. Furthermore, if you're getting, say, a decent phone plan, you're probably going to have a better equipped camera than what most people are going to give you. If someone's giving you a fucking broken Coolpix camera from the 90s, that's not going to help you get anything that you need to do. So here's the thing, work with what you've got. And for this individual, I will humbly say that when you work it, immerse yourself into the content. I've seen people who came out of nowhere. There are people who have made their careers in the 2 years during the pandemic. Okay. There are people who became internet fucking celebrities doing fucking videos on TikTok with their goddamn phone in and during the pandemic. Okay. So it's not as if you're going to need the latest and greatest equipment, drones and whatnot. Okay. Now, the other part is that even if you do get that, and I'm going to shine light on myself because I'm not trying to look down on this individual. I'm trying to hopefully teach, and I'm going to do my Hagwon roundup at the end just to sort of hit these points home. I've been in Korea for 20 years this year. For the most part, I have been taking photos. My first camera was a 300D that the late Dave Harvey, and I got in Nampodong in Busan. I have worked for the AFC Champions League. As I said, Visa. I've been sponsored by Flixel. I've done jobs for Hyundai. I worked for their magazine for years, Soul Magazine. I've sold photos to Travel and Leisure. I've had photos printed in National Geographic, things like that. But I am not a working photographer. I have the equipment, I have cameras, I've got film cameras, I've got drones, things like that. But that doesn't make you a world famous photographer. That doesn't even get you a solid following on fucking Instagram. It gets you into debt for some people. So I would say, first and foremost, to this individual, stop asking for things that you think are going to make you a better content creator and start focusing on techniques that will with what you've got. Okay, so again, if you've got a phone, take better pictures with your phone. There are a ton of amazing apps. Lightroom is on the iPhone now. Photoshop, I think, is on the iPhone. All of these great tools that you can use primarily for free, and you can post great content. CapCut for videos is a huge one that a lot of people use. And the point being is that before asking for Apple computers or things like that, you should start building up that portfolio, as Ben said. And again, I have kind of heard about this particular individual for many years. He's, as I said before, he's asked some unique questions. I've never actually seen photos that make me go, damn, I should give him my EOS R. No. And it's not saying that he's a bad photographer. I'm just saying that like the rest of us, he's building. And I would say, going back to that portfolio, do the reels, have something when people come to you and say like, hey, what are you doing? And you can show them something and say like, look, this is what I do. This is what I create with nothing. Now, if you were to sponsor me, I could do more. I could get my reach further. Now, the other thing too, I want to kind of finish off on is the fact that, I don't know, maybe it's my generation. If you take something, you have to give something back. So I'm gonna go back, because I'm not sure if you know this, but many years ago I did a idiotic thing, and I did I think it was an Indiegogo or something, but I really wanted to buy this particular coffee machine. Okay, I'm sorry, I'm shamefully admitting this, but I ran a crowdfunding campaign so I could buy a really nice espresso machine. But in the same sense is that I wasn't just asking for free money. The people who had helped me out, I basically sent them stuff from my work. So I got calendars, there was prints, limited edition prints, all of this kind of stuff that they could order from me. And essentially that was going to help me buy this espresso machine. And it sounds ridiculous at this moment in time. Like I'm shamefully admitting that, because the comments I got, again, were like, oh, I wish I could buy something like that, or hey, I need an Audi. But it was that same thing. The point being, though, is that I was willing to give back for the pledges, I guess you could call them, the donations. I was willing to give back my hard work in exchange for their money. That was the difference. And I learned my lesson. I never did it again. And actually, I kind of just don't even like speaking about it. But I have to admit that. Now, the point here is that if you're asking for all of this stuff, DSLR cameras, plural, drones, plural, Macintosh computers, Apple Mac, iPads, you name it, what do the people get in return? And this is sort of the issue that I think a lot of people, and maybe the younger generation, forgets, is that like, yeah, it's great if you have subscribers and Patreon or something like that. Going back to what Ben said, like, you have to build up that audience, that theory of the first 1,000 fans or whatever. You have to build that up to the point where they're willing to invest in you. And again, like, I've had a few wonderful, generous people, you know who you are, that have supported this podcast and have helped me out along the way to at least get the episodes out. What I'm giving them in return is basically the content that I'm creating. And it sounds flimsy, but I built up to the point where the relationship and bonds that I have with these people is strong enough that that's all that they need. However, if you're starting out and you don't have any of that relationship, asking for a $2,000 camera is a big ask. Now, I think this sort of mirrors what Chase was originally trying to tell me way back in that episode that he commented on in 2017. But again, you have to put in the time. And I'll relate it to a story that I basically always keep in my mind about when I wanted to really get into coffee. And if you don't know me, pre Peter McKinnon, I was a full on coffee addict. And I essentially pulled up my stakes in Korea. I headed back to Canada and I moved to Vancouver to learn the ways of coffee. And again, this is, hence why I ended up doing that whole Indiegogo thing for the espresso machine. But I knew that if I wanted to open up my own cafe, which I thought was a cool thing at the time, don't judge me on that one, I needed to learn the industry. So I went into the coffee business. I got a job at Cafe Artigiano in Vancouver, one of the top cafes in the city at the time. And I busted my ass for over, well, I think close to a year or a little bit more. I busted my ass and I took out garbages, I cleaned dishes, I learned how to make espresso based drinks, all of that kind of stuff. Partway through, I became the general manager of my own store. I had the entire store under my command, I guess you could say. And what happened? I learned that I didn't like making coffee as much as I did enjoy drinking coffee. And that is true. Like some people, they had a knack for it, but every day I would come into work and someone would be screaming in my face, like, why are you out of brown sugar? I use 5 packets of brown sugar in my coffee. Every day I was dealing with this. And I really just didn't like the industry. I didn't like the people I was that were above me. There was a lot of cocky douchebags who, for lack of a better term, they just liked the ego of having people bow down to them. So I got out of the coffee industry and I returned to Korea and focused on my photography. I hear a lot of similar stories about people who get into the professional photography business. It is a hard business and it doesn't pay a lot in the beginning. And from what I hear, like a lot of people, especially if they're getting into certain aspects of professional photography, don't like the hustle. They don't like the pressure. They don't like the deadlines. They don't like people critiquing their work. They're thinking that it's, the same idea that I had at the coffee shop. It's going to be chill. What are you? I'm a photographer, or I make coffee. And you listen to jazz music and, you work remotely and you wear a scarf. I don't know. Maybe that Ben maybe knows. Maybe, I think he wears a scarf. I'm not sure. The point being is that it's not what you think it will be until you actually get into the shit. And until you get into the shit, you have to edge your way into it. You have to build up your portfolio. You can't just kick off a YouTube channel with drones and DSLR cameras and, you're editing in coffee shops in Vancouver or Vietnam and wearing a scarf. No, you have to earn that scarf. Maybe. I don't know. Maybe there's like some sort of professional photographers like scarf condition. Who knows? But point being, you have to put the work into it. Okay. You have to get out there and do it. And I'm not going to give you like this whole bullshit of, oh, it's the other 50% or whatever Chase Jarvis says. What I'm saying is that you have to dive into it. And myself, I think part of the reason why I haven't fully dove into it is because I've got bills to pay. And I've got a wife and I've got cats. I know it sounds weird, but reality is we just can't have kids, but we still have these bills to pay. So I can't just fuck off to Sokcho to photograph a lighthouse whenever I want to. I need to either build up the money. If I don't have the jobs, then I can't pay for the gas or the housing or whatever. So this is the stuff that kind of goes along with a lot of the reality of working these jobs. The other thing is that you're going to get taken advantage of. People want you to work for free. So it's a tough one. You can work for free to build up these positions, but you have to network. And this is the other side of the coin. Maybe this is what Chase Jarvis was talking about with the other 50%, but I think he was more talking about like becoming the popular guy. What I'm saying is that, and this is what I'm doing with Wilson Online, going into places, showing off your best work and saying like, hey, like, look, this is what I can do for you. What can you do for me? And then building up those relationships. And a good key point to that is one of the people that I worked with, Donna's Donuts here, I did an article on her donut shop way back when, and we just built up a relationship. My wife and I went in there and we talked to the young lady and her mother who run the donut shop. And now they are a huge supporter of what I do. Like we haven't necessarily approached them for advertising, but they're supporting us in other ways. We've had numerous meetings with them. This could not be done if we didn't go in there and just network. If we didn't go in there and say like, look, we're going to take some photos. We're going to do an article for you. What can you sort of help us do? I know if I push a little bit, yeah, I can probably get advertising. I can probably get something. But again, you have to go out and build up this rapport with people. You cannot just expect someone to give you all the equipment and then magically you will have all these jobs. It just doesn't work like that. And then the last thing I do want to say is basically a lot of people don't want to hear, and I think another commenter said this, that these jobs take a lot of hard work. I've become disillusioned with the whole industry for a long time. I'm not going to lie, I'm not successful. Okay, I've had some good experiences, but I'm not like Ben Weller or Roy Cruz, Dylan Goldby, Greg Samborski, any of these guys that if you look at photography in Korea, you will find those guys' names. What I am is still dealing with this stuff. So when I say that you should study the craft and be better, I really mean it, because when I look at a lot of the photography groups in Korea, I'm seeing people that are coming into Korea who are buying their camera and doing amazing stuff because they have studied other people's photos, they have studied YouTube videos, and they've learned how to use their camera. They've developed a style, they've developed a narrative, they've learned how to create stories, all by just taking a step back, lowering their ego, and doing it. Myself included, I need to do it more. So I'm not above this particular individual. I'm just not asking for a handout. Point being is that I need to study more. I read, I think, close to 56 books last year. Many of them were the ebooks that I got through 5-Day Deal, Griffin Stewart's photography thing. A lot of it, I still had to retrain my brain to really remember how to compose shots. But you have to take that time, okay? You have to spend that time learning the craft. And I'm not just talking about getting out of P mode or green mode. What I'm saying is that when I see articles written by Chris Tharp, photographed by Ben Weller for National Geographic, and I'm looking at these photos and the words that go along with them, they're telling a story. And if you took away the words, they would still tell that same story. And until you get to that level where you can take a picture of someone coming out of Henya swimming in the water and she comes out, until you can get that level where you look at the image and you stare at it, kind of like a Steve McCurry kind of thing, you're not going to get a lot of interest in your photos. And that's why nobody cares about my shit, because they look at it and go, huh, yeah, whoo, that's colorful. Yeah, whoo, eyes are burning. Yeah. Didn't you take the same photo? Yeah, like last week and the week before and for last 2 decades. Oh, right. That's my shit. But until you get to that point where, recently I was looking at this guy's work on Instagram, and he's just taking pictures of people in markets as everybody does when they first get here, but there's like a richness in the color. And it's this story where you want to know why this lady's doing this thing, or you're it's interesting and your eyes are focused on that. No doubt that guy, should he pursue a career in photography, will go far. He will be getting the jobs. And again, so I just want to say that until you get to that level, you have to step back and work with the craft. You can do this from your phone. You can do it from wherever with what you've got. So the last thing I'll say is just to recap essentially what I'm talking about. And that is the person that I've gone in depth on. It was basically asking for a lot of a free equipment to help kickstart his YouTube blogging video career. And I will say that I looked into him a little bit farther. He does have a GoFundMe with a goal of $50,000 to pay for his basic needs, subway, buffet dinners, and free transportation around Korea. All that aside, I really want to look at some concrete ways for this person to actually achieve what he can do. Now, again, this post is currently live in the Busan Lightstalkers group. And as I said before, Ben Weller, who is a fantastic photographer, gave some concrete advice, which I pretty much piggybacked off of. But the basic point that I want to leave you with for all of us, because as I said before, I'm still struggling with this as well, is this. You have to put the work into educating and mastering your craft yourself. Again, this is essentially what Chase Jarvis told me, and I'm trying to make it as less douchebaggy as I can. But you have to put that time into to build up a portfolio, to make really good images that people will look at. And you have to, if you're making video, you have to make videos that are entertaining, that will help get eyes on your work. And a good example is I just saw a dude that used to teach in Korea who had a food show that he did. Like, he went around to all of the stalls in Korea. He moved to Vietnam. He had his own show on a US network, and now he was on the Joe Rogan show. So the sky's the limit for that kind of stuff. I mean, you can take Joe Rogan or not and leave him, who cares? But he's on that level now, and he was a English teacher in Korea at one point in time. So get the work done. The second part of this is, as you get jobs or as you network, don't immediately drop big money on glass, as Ben said. Invest in trips, get out there. As I said before, like, I have 1,000 photos out my back window that no one gives a shit about. Why? Because I'm not investing my time into getting to Seoul or to different places to get these shots that will firmly put my name in front of people. I'm stuck around here. I'm not willing to really get out there and shoot anything. And I have to accept that no one's really interested in Ulsan. So get your photos, get content, work on your craft. Second one, network, get with the right people, start shooting hotels, get with local restaurants, things like that, where people will be talking about you. They'll see your content all over the place. Third thing, build up a portfolio. So use these places. Like right now, what I'm doing with Ulsan Online is every time I go out to a new restaurant with my wife, I bring my camera, I get some shots, I put it up on the Instagram page for people to see. I am paying for the food myself, and I'm using that as a showpiece so that when I talk to different restaurants or companies, I can show them what I have done before. And if they like that, then they can hire me. And that's the best way to go about it. Use what you've already got, that talent or the space that you already have, and just go with it. If you're looking, as I think this guy wanted to be like a tour guide, he's in Busan. Walk around Gamcheonmao, walk around Haeundae, Gwangali. Use your cell phone camera. Done deal. Get those shots, get content out there, and start networking. And then the third is, and I'm going to be quite blunt with this one, don't expect the free lunch. Don't expect people to hand you anything. It's just not going to happen. I've been kicking this can down the road for, as I said, almost 20 years now. And I've had some great experiences, but it's never been because people have handed it to me. Like I talk about the visa job or even being on TV recently. That was a lot of hard work. The visa was mind-numbingly difficult to work with. We pulled it off, but it wasn't a cakewalk. Like, they didn't just say like, well, you're hired. Like, here's a free night's stay at the high-end hotel. No, I was driving through the middle of the night, 4 hours all the way up to Gangneung just to get there in time. I was working day in and day out. I was taking phone calls when I was pretending to go to the bathroom between my classes because I was still teaching, things like that. The TV show that I did was I think 4 days of nonstop work. Like we did 12 to 13 hours one day, back to back outside. It was freezing, but that's what you have to do to get that stuff. So you have to be willing to put the work in. It's not about the gear. Point being, it's not about the gear. So again, very long-winded episode today, but really and truthfully, I hoped that you and myself included can get some good advice from this episode, and I really hope that you understand that I'm not trying to pick on this guy. I'm just using it actually to really just talk myself through it, because I'm going through the same thing as well. So with that being said, I'll let you go. Take care, and I'll see you again next week.